Hey, everybody, welcome to our New York Knicks episode, arguably the simplest episode of this show that we will do in the calendar year 2025. I'm Dan Bespris. Thank you for joining us. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. And this is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball presented by FanDuel Sports. We'll have the New York Knicks with a season win total number of 53.5 over at the FanDuel Sports book. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the program. Today, there are a very obvious grouping of Knicks that we're going to discuss on the program. I'd like to do 6. And if you're wondering, Dan, 6 is bigger than 5. You're right. You nailed it, friends. 6 is bigger than 5 because there's one bench player on the Knicks that I want to shine a light on, not because I think he necessarily needs to be drafted, but because I think he's the guy that could throw a little bit of a wrench into what was happening last year. The biggest thing to keep in mind as we talk about the Knicks, who went 51-31 last year and overall were a very good offensive team, had Tom Thibodeau at the helm and did not adjust as the season went on. The Knicks, specifically offensively, got off to a great start last year and just kind of slowly petered as the year went on. Not that they got bad, because they had excellent health and were able to sort of weather whatever storms might have come their way because of that very good health and a very good starting 5. And because Tom Thibodeau was willing to play his starters 36, 37, 38 minutes a night to get there. It's the Thibodeau way. Somehow, Jalen Brunson was the only member of the starting 5 that really got hurt last year. Towns missed 10 games. That was the second most of the core guys. Mikal Bridges played all 32 or 82 again, 37 minutes a night. Josh Hart was up around 38 minutes this past year and managed to only miss 5 games. OG only missed 8. And Anunoby had almost 37 minutes a ball game. And that is the overarching and prevailing theme when we talk about the Knicks today. And it doesn't really matter what order we do these guys in. I suppose order of likely getting drafted would probably make the most sense. But regardless of how you shake it out, and we'll throw Cat up on the board to begin this thing, everybody on the Knicks, everybody of at least the main dudes, is likely to be headed the wrong way more often if you ran a million simulations than going the right way, at least from a overall fantasy production standpoint. The team might do the same, worse, better. I don't know. Obviously, they're hoping that Mike Brown can get things cooking a little bit more on the offensive side. And so maybe there will be a small efficiency uptick, a la what we got out of the Cleveland Cavaliers last year. But of course, the problem with what the Cavaliers did last season is that the only player that really, truly benefited from them decimating teams and being efficient on offense was Evan Mobley. Everybody else on the Cavs, I don't want to say Darius Garland took a step back, and Jared Allen didn't really take a step back, but they didn't take a step forward. They covered up a decrease in minutes with an increase in efficiency, and that's kind of your best case scenario for the New York Knicks this coming year. Okay, show's over. That was it. No, I kid. We'll go through the players one by one, but the analysis on each one is going to be remarkably similar in a way that we just haven't really had up to this point. And it's one of the reasons why I delayed doing the Atlantic Division until the end, is because you've got a team like the Knicks where the storyline is one big one, coaching change. You've got a team like the Nets where the whole thing is just a fart sound effect. You've got the Sixers where 2 of their main guys are probably out for I don't know how long. And then, the Celtics were kind of fun. We did them over the weekend. And the Raptors, they'll be kind of interesting as well. And I wanted to give them, honestly, a show that had a little bit more air on both sides, because I think the Raptors are probably your most intriguing Atlantic Division team. But we're talking about the Knicks right now. Cat is where we'll start because he had the best fantasy season last year. He was number 6 in 9 category leagues on the shoulders of 24 points, 13 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 0.7 blocks, 53-83 splits, 2 3-pointers a game. But, and it's a relatively sizable but, Cat was on his way down as the season progressed. Not for extraordinarily obvious reasons, because if you compare the first half of the season to the second half of the season, his numbers weren't that different. But the most obvious thing that was happening is that he was getting pushed away from the bucket on offense. That was the big one. His blocks went down as the season went on. His rebounds went down as the season went on. And that led to, well, I think his threes might have even gone up a little bit, or maybe stayed about the same. But when the blocks and the rebounds go down, it leads to less value. You're a center. That's the stuff you want to get out of your center. And it wasn't this big, massive drop off because, again, over the entire season, he was at, like we just talked about, 24.5 points, almost 13 rebounds, 1.7 defensive stats. Over the final month of the year, when teams kind of started to defend the Knicks a little bit differently, mind you, Jalen Brunson missed a bunch of time during this stretch, so Cat's usage was actually a little bit up. He was at 25.5 points. Okay, great. Rebounds were down by almost 2 per game. Blocks were down by 0.2 of a block. The rebounds are the really obvious one. And why did this happen? Some of it was just the rigors of a long season. Long season under his belt, rebounds are going to come and go. There's a feistiness you have when your legs are fresh that maybe you don't have at the end of the year. But some of it is because teams started vacating Josh Hart. Said, here, Josh, you beat us. To put more bodies on Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. Those are the target guys. So Cat, at times, saw his field goal percent slip. At times, saw his rebounding slip. At times, saw his shot blocking because I want to be near the rim slip. Again, not huge numbers, but enough to where he went from a first rounder, like a bona fide middle, great first rounder the first half of the year, to more like a late second, early third the second half of the year. Is that enough reason to not draft him mid-late first round this coming season? Probably not. Odds are he's going to play 32, 33, 34 minutes instead of 35, and that'll impact rebounding and shot blocking and assisting and the things that tend to accrue the longer you're on the court. He'll probably get the same number of shots in slightly fewer minutes per game because this is what usage guys do. They just go a little harder and they take a little bit more. But if anything, like we talked about, there are probably small incremental losses coming across the board for the New York Knicks, and Cat will probably not be spared them. Next player that we're going to talk about is Jalen Brunson. He had, scratch that. Your second best New York, I'm going in the order of 9 Cat fantasy rankings. Your second highest, Brunson was 4th by that account. Your second highest fantasy ranking on the Knicks belonged to Josh Hart last year. Yes, 13.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, 1 3, half a block, 52.5, 77.5 for the splits, about 2 turnovers per game, and an eye-popping almost 38 minutes per ball game. 37 minutes, 40 seconds a night. Ridiculous numbers that simply will not hold. There is 1, maybe 2 coaches in the NBA that are willing to play a dude 77 games and 38 minutes a night for an entire season. Those coaches are Tom Thibodeau, who was the coach of the Knicks, Nick Nurse, who's out with the broken down jalopy of a team in Philadelphia. That's it. It should be no surprise then that of the highest minute per game guys in the NBA, the only dude above 37 minutes that didn't come from one of those 2 teams was Devin Booker in Phoenix. Tyrese Maxey, number 1 minute per game guy in the NBA. Josh Hart, number 2. Booker, 3. Mikal Bridges, 4. Jokic, that's not what Denver wants to do long-term, 5. OG Anunoby, 6th. KD, 7th. So Phoenix, they're occupying 2 slots up there. Jason Tatum, 8th, and he's out for the year. And then you get into guys playing around 36 minutes, which is a number that you see much more often. But by the way, Jalen Brunson, 17th highest minutes per game in the NBA. These are going down. How much, I don't know. And Josh Hart, who is going at a, I don't want to say late, but like a late-ish spot in drafts, I do think that there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, he's a guy that all of his stuff is about being on the court a billion years a night, if that makes any sense. It doesn't. If you take him off the floor, rebounds go down, assists go down, steals go down, blocks go down, threes go down, field goal attempts go down. Every minute he's out there, it's not quite linear, but it's pretty close to linear. He's I'm going to roll up a ton of fantasy stats kind of guy, and he's not a dude who can withstand a big minutes hit. So let's call it, again, small minutes hit. Get him from 37.5 down to something in the low to mid 30s instead of the high 30s. What does that do to him? He was number 26 in 9-cat last year. That most likely takes him out of the third round. I would think fourth or even fifth are more likely with those minutes changing. Secondarily, and this is the other guy I wanted to talk about on today's show, one of the issues that the Knicks saw down the stretch as I throw Deuce McBride up on the board. No, I'm not suggesting you need to draft McBride. Far from it. I don't think he's going to play enough, and I don't think he's going to do enough. And frankly, his fantasy game isn't robust enough unless Jalen Brunson is out. What I am suggesting is that down the stretch, when teams started defending the Knicks differently, if you read a lot of the Knicks like X's and O's coverage guys on the Twitters and other social media and across the sort of beatverse, what they were suggesting, and I'll admit I didn't watch every minute of every Knicks game, but what those people in the know were suggesting is that Tom Thibodeau was too stubborn to play a guy who was a better floor spacing option long term. Even if Josh Hart actually kind of handled his own from three-point land this last year, it was still Josh Hart level three-pointers, meaning low 30s and lower volume from out there. It's just not where he wanted to be, in favor of a guy who's a little smaller, a little quicker, a little bit more of I'll jack up some threes. And McBride shot 41%, not this year, but the previous year, 37% this year, and that could potentially translate to more playing time. So what does this all mean for you guys on draft night? My suggestion is probably avoid Josh Hart, which I know is probably a vast overreaction to a guy who, by all accounts, is still going to be a feature part of what the Knicks are doing. But I do think that there's a little bit of a scary chance that he falls 3-ish rounds and doesn't give you the robust peripheral stats that he gave last year. In that, again, he's not going early, not by a long shot. He's getting drafted, I think, in the 40s or 50s. 45 is where he's at right now. But he's a guy I'd rather target in the 50s and 60s. We're off by like a round because I think the drop-off could take him as far as 75th. Now, I think that's probable. No, I think the drop-off probably takes him more into that late 40s range. But there's some sort of drop coming. And the question is it just a coaching change drop or is it a schematic drop? That's the one that I think we need to be worried about. Believe it or not, the next highest ranked Knick from last year, still not Jalen Brunson, was OG Anunoby, whose face just blew out the side of the screen here on YouTube. OG was great last year and healthy. 18 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, 2.4 combined defensive stats. That's a nice one. 2.3 threes, 47.5 from the field, and a solid 81. Nice neutral free throw shooter from that wing spot. Really terrific year. Only 8 games missed. But again, 36 minutes and 40 seconds a night is a hard number to replicate, especially when we scroll down here on for YouTubers and note the fact that OG had really not been healthy through a season since his rookie year. That's a lie. COVID year 1, he was pretty healthy. He missed 8 games, 15, 3, about 30 again, roughly, 15, 30 again, and then 8 this past year. So it's all over the map. This was a very good free throw shooting year for Anunoby. So hard to know if that's a thing that's going to repeat itself. And when you take the minutes hit in, what does that do to steals and blocks? That should be, I don't want to say the biggest thing on the table, but certainly a large one. You want him out there 33, 34 minutes, and steals and blocks hopefully will continue to be good. He's probably, OG, the safest floor guy of these Knicks we're talking about because of his ability to get defensive stats in 32 or 33 minutes. If his scoring takes a small hit, if rebounding takes a small hit, I don't think that's the world's biggest issue. Like, could his rebounding come from 4.8 back down to, low fours? Yeah, it could. Could the assists drop from 2.2 down to 2? Yeah, it's not a huge deal because the scoring, would that come down from 18? Could that drop to like 17? Yeah, these are small blips. For a guy who finished at number 37 last year and is being drafted at 75. So he finished. No, I guess that makes sense. Where Josh Hart is at 45, OG's at 75. Even though I think this coming season, OG probably beats Hart. Last year, they were separated by 10, basically 1 round of value, and they're being drafted 3 rounds apart. They both have had injury-plagued careers to some degree. Hart's been healthier for a few seasons in a row now, OG just this past one. But again, we're talking about, this is a 7th-round guy with top 50 potential. That's to me, of all the guys we're talking about, Anunoby is probably the one I'm most likely to end up with because he has per game upside, because I think his fantasy game can take a minute per game hit. So finally now, we get to Jalen Brunson, who it feels like should have been earlier on this board, but because of the way 9Cat rankings go, because Brunson has these sort of weird, gaping, mismatched holes in his fantasy game from that guard spot, he had a great year and finished at number 50 in 9Cat. 26.7 plus assists per game, 49% from the field, 82 at the foul line. Not bad, but not great. 2.3 threes, also kind of fine, but not great. But under 3 rebounds a night. It's hard to do that when you're playing 35 and a half minutes per ball game. Just 1 combined defensive stat, and that caps Brunson when he's not taking 22, 23 shots a night. The way that he was a top 20 guy a couple seasons back was everybody was out for the Knicks, and he was taking 24 shots a game for stretches. That's not happening again. The good news with Brunson is he's the initiator. The ball's going to be in his hands. He's going to lead the team in usage almost without question. Cat will be kind of on his heels, but Jalen's going to get his points. He's going to get his assists. There's a very reasonable shot that he can get up to around 35 minutes per game again. He was not one of the highest playing Tom Thibodeau guys, but let's take a minute and a half off of his ledger. It's not going to change his fantasy game all that much. The problem with Jalen Brunson is he's getting drafted like he's a 2nd rounder. And because of the way 9Cat rolls all the numbers together, he's just not. You can try punting different things. Doesn't help that much because he doesn't have the obvious weak spot. Yeah, I mean, if you're punting rebounds, he's a great guard for that. But how many punt rebounds teams are not also punting other big man categories? Brunson becomes this weird hybrid player where you could take like a Trae Young early, and the inclination would be to punt all the big man stats and then go with another heavy assist guy. But maybe Brunson makes more sense, and maybe you don't punt field goal percent at the end of it all. So it's a weird fit 2nd rounder with Brunson. He's a guard, but he doesn't do enough in steals to be your sort of traditional guard build. He doesn't really do enough in 3-pointers to be your traditional guard build. He's a guard who stinks at a couple of the guard things, rebounding and shot blocking, but he's also not that great at one of the other guard things, which is steals and threes, or 2 of them. But he happens to be better at field goal percent, which is more big man leaning, and slightly better at turnovers than most guys with 7+ assists. And that falls more into your sort of roto build team. But you're not going to draft him in the second round in a 9-cat roto league where you're not punting something because he's probably not going to get to the top 25. And he's probably going to take a small but non-zero step backwards. So I didn't like Jalen Brunson, even if he was able to do exactly the same stuff as last year. I definitely don't like him with the coaching change and the fear that surrounds that. I mean, maybe there are ways that he could we up the assists? I guess. I mean, 7 and change is pretty damn good already. But without an injury to Karl-Anthony Towns, I can't imagine that a whole lot more falls into Brunson's hands. His usage is already very high. There's just not that much left for him to do. And finally, Mikal Bridges, the Iron Man of the NBA. Scrolling here on YouTube, the games played numbers are laughable in a good way for Bridges. I think he's missed. I honestly, at this point, I don't even know anymore if he's missed a single game in his NBA career. He played 82 his first year, COVID season, 73 and 72. Then 82. Then he played 83 the year he went from Brooklyn or from Phoenix to Brooklyn because the Nets had one more game remaining than the Suns did. He only played 20 seconds in that 83rd game, but he still played in all of them. Played in every game for Brooklyn last year, played in every game for the Knicks this most recent season at a career high minutes per game of 37. But the problem with Bridges is that even though the minutes came back, some of the stuff that he used to do in Phoenix didn't. Most notably, defensive stats. He's a guy that has lost his defense. It's very much, I think we could call it Josh Richardsonitis, where his first couple years in the NBA, Bridges profiled as a guy. I mean, look, I'll read him off for the folks that are listening to the recorded version of the podcast. During his time in Phoenix, he was anywhere from 1.1 to 1.6 steals per game. And he had one kind of down shot blocking year mixed in there, but his shot blocking was 0.5, 0.6, 0.8 was mixed in there. He went to Brooklyn, and all of that just sort of evaporated. He was at 1 steal per game, which we thought was sort of a low water mark, and he was closer to a half a block or less. Went to New York, got an extra 2 to 3 minutes per ball game. Steals went down to 0.9. Shot blocking stayed down at 0.5. The field goal percent came back. That was something we were hoping we'd see more of, playing alongside better orchestrators than his time in Brooklyn, where he was more of the feature guy and had to score more points. So, okay, we got one of the things we wanted. But the lack of defensive stats and the weird tapering of his free throw shooting abilities back down to basically what he was around his rookie year made all of that other stuff pointless. I don't know how many minutes he's going to play. He's a great defender where the stats are not translating to actual defensive stats. I don't know that they're going to come back. I can hope, I can pray that he gets 1.1 or 1.2 steals instead of 0.9, but I can't guarantee it, especially when, again, on all likelihood, the minutes per game are probably going to drop from 37 to more like 34 or 35. It's going to be hard to keep him off the floor for more than 13, 14 minutes a ball game. Now, obviously, the big advantage with Mikal Bridges is he plays. At some point, everybody's going to get hurt and everybody's going to miss a game. But to this point in his career, Bridges hasn't had that happen yet. And because of that, while he might have only been fluttering in the 85 to 90 range last year on a per game basis, by totals, he was number 42. That matters more in head-to-head than it does in games cap leagues. And I got to pick my terminology better. It matters more in unlimited games leagues than it does in games capped league. It just so happens that most unlimited games formats are head-to-head. Most games capped formats are roto. Not all, but most. Hopefully more people play the games cap head-to-head iteration that Josh is pushing out there. He's doing the Lord's work here on the fantasy side, but it's not going to be adopted by the masses, I would think, for a long time, if at all. It's a more fair way to play, but I don't think it's about to take over, unfortunately. So for games cap style, all right, like let's say Bridges is floating around. Where's Mikal going? He's going around pick 100. I guess that's fine, kind of regardless. But do you really want a guy that profiles as a top 100 play with your pick 100? I don't. Not in a games cap format. I'd rather take a swing. Who are other guys around Mikal Bridges on the draft board right now that have a chance to beat him? There's quite a few. Some of them riskier plays, but if we start at pick like 90-ish, you've got Van Vliet at 92, Mark Williams at 93, Peyton Pritchard at 96, Okongwu 97, Donovan Clingan 101, Tobias Harris, also kind of a boring sort, but less boring than Bridges. At 103, Christian Brown, Tumani Kamara, Asar Thompson, D'Lo for half a year. I don't want that one either. Zach Edey is mixed in there. Now we're getting pretty far down. He's at 111. So I think I would consider, unless I had a really risky team already, I would probably lean towards taking a risk in the 9th round instead of going with Bridges. But you'll know your team better than I do today. It's September 8th. You haven't drafted your team yet. If you're in the middle of a draft and you make your 8th round pick and you're like, oh, crap, I got 2 or 3 guys on this team that I would deem to be risks of something, shutdown, injury, whatever, then Bridges makes a lot of sense as your 9th rounder. Knicks are not going to shut anybody down. He's going to be out there playing. You're going to get your 17 points a game. You're going to get a couple of rebounds, a couple of assists. You're going to get a steal. You're going to get okay percentages. You're going to get a couple of threes. And you've just been like, all right, you know what? I can just etch this dude in stone. It's boring. He's not really helping me almost anywhere, but he's also not hurting me, and I'm not taking zeros at the end of the day. So Bridges, totally fine head-to-head pick around pick 100 if he fits not even team build from a statistical standpoint, but from a do you need someone who's going to give you numbers most nights standpoint. Games cap style, way less interesting. Way less interesting because you're going to want to chase a bit more upside. And the only reason you'd go the other way is if your team is really beat up. But even then, you almost, at that point, you might just want to lean into the risk. Because what the hell is a guy giving you, number 95 level stuff going to do? If you took risky guys in the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th round, if those guys don't pan out, Bridges is not going to save your team in games cap. At least in head-to-head, if you got some guys early that are hurt a bunch of the time, you need someone who's not giving you a 0. Roto, you're just done. You're not going to be able to keep up. You're better off having a revolving door of high upside pickups in games cap because there's no moves limit. All right. That's your New York Knicks. Pretty much everybody taking some kind of small hit. As I mentioned, I think OG Anunoby probably the least likely to be impacted by a minute per game adjustment. Brunson typically a bit overdrafted. Bridges, again, he's more your boring, durable, late head-to-head type guy. Be very careful with Josh Hart because of the Miles McBride possibility. And Karl Anthony Towns probably going a little earlier than he should, but I don't know that you have much of a choice because the early rounds are a grumpy old mess this year with no Halliburton, no Jason Tatum, no Kyrie Irving, and no Damian Lillard. I am Dan Bespers. Thanks for watching, everybody. This show, again, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sports. The Knicks season win total at 53.5, which feels weirdly high given what they did last year. I would lean to the under. Thank you to FanDuel and their partnership with us here at Old Man Squad and the Believe Network. Like the video, subscribe to the video or the pod. Please drop a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. Find me on social media at Dan Bespers. I'm about to start tweeting more about draft stuff, so that's getting the old Twitter fingers ready to go. Most people do show a phone in their hands. I don't. I'm here at the Old Man Squad. We use a PC for what we need to get done because phones are small and hard to read. I'll see you guys. So long for now. Goodbye. My voice is great.